He said it so casually, I almost didn't catch it at first. Honestly, Megan, this is nothing. Bradley Hoffman leaned back in his chair, fingers laced behind his head like he was discussing the weather. The conference room felt smaller suddenly. 3 other people sat at that table, my manager Amanda, her supervisor Keith, and someone from legal I'd never seen before. None of them looked at me. They studied their phones, their notebooks, the pattern on the carpet. Anywhere but my face. I'd spent weeks building my complaint. Documentation. Timestamps. Email chains. Witness accounts. And Bradley had just erased it all with one word. Nothing. My hands trembled in my lap. I forced them still. I nodded like I understood, like this made perfect sense, like my world wasn't collapsing. But something inside me cracked so cleanly it almost felt surgical. My name is Megan Torres, and I'm not someone who causes trouble. I show up early. I meet deadlines. I volunteer for the projects nobody wants. 4 or 5 years at Westfield Technologies, I'd been the person managers could count on. Reliable. Competent. Invisible when it suited them. Excellent when they needed results. I liked it that way. Stability mattered to me. My apartment wasn't fancy, but it was mine. My job wasn't glamorous, but it paid my bills and then some. I had health insurance, a retirement account, 2 weeks of vacation I rarely used. At 32, I'd built something solid. Nothing flashy. Just real. Safe. Which is exactly why what happened next devastated me so completely. Because I'd trusted the system. I believed that doing things right would protect me. I was wrong. The favoritism started small. Marcus Chun. No, I won't use that name. The favoritism started with Tyler. Tyler Grant worked in my department. Same level as me. Hired 6 months after I was. He missed deadlines constantly. He showed up late to meetings, interrupted people when they spoke, took credit for collaborative work. But somehow, he was untouchable. When Tyler missed a critical client presentation, Amanda laughed it off. When I was 10 minutes late once because of a car accident, I got a written warning. When Tyler botched a data report that cost us a contract, it was a learning opportunity. When I made a minor formatting error, it went to my file. I started documenting everything. Dates, times, witnesses. The pattern was undeniable. So I reported it. Through proper channels. By the book. To HR. To Bradley. Bradley Hoffman had been our HR director for 3 years. Early 40s. Always wore expensive suits that looked slightly too tight, like he'd gained weight since buying them but refused to acknowledge it. He had this way of talking that made everything sound reasonable, even when it wasn't. Smooth. Practiced. He'd nod sympathetically while you spoke, make notes on his tablet, say things like, I hear you, and let's explore this further. People trusted him. I trusted him. When I submitted my formal complaint, I'd actually felt relief. Finally, someone would see what was happening. Finally, the system would work. I gave him everything. 15 pages of documentation. 32 specific incidents. Email evidence. Names of witnesses who'd seen the differential treatment. I'd been so careful, so thorough. And he'd sat across from me in that conference room and called it nothing. 2 days after that meeting, Amanda pulled me aside. Her office was small, cluttered with motivational posters nobody found motivating. Can we talk about your attitude lately? She asked, closing the door. My attitude? I'd barely spoken since the meeting. I'd done my work, kept my head down, stayed professional. I'm not sure what you mean, I said carefully. She sighed like I was being difficult. You seemed offensive, resistant to feedback. Bradley mentioned you've been having some adjustment issues. Adjustment issues. Those were his words, not hers. I could hear it in the phrasing. That's when I understood with perfect, terrible clarity, my complaint hadn't been dismissed. It had been shared with the people I'd complained about. They knew everything I'd said, and now they were circling. I cried once. In my car, in the parking garage, gripping the steering wheel, so hard my knuckles went white. 5 minutes of gasping. Ugly tears that fogged my windshield. Then I wiped my face, fixed my makeup in the rearview mirror, and made a decision. If this was going to destroy me, it wouldn't be because I panicked. It wouldn't be because I gave up. I'd worked too hard, come too far, survived too much to let Bradley Hoffman and his protection racket take everything from me. So I stopped crying and started watching. I started listening. I started saving every email, every message, every scrap of evidence that crossed my desk. If they wanted to make this a war, fine. But I'd choose my battlefield. The next week, I passed Bradley in the hallway. He smiled at me. Not a polite nod, but a real smile. Wide. Confident. Almost friendly. "Morning, Megan. Hope things are settling down for you." That smile told me everything I needed to know. He thought this was over. He thought I'd accepted his ruling, gone back to my cubicle, learned my lesson about making waves. He thought he'd won. I smiled back. "Everything's fine, Bradley. Thanks for asking." And I meant it, because that overconfidence, that absolute certainty that he'd handled me, that was going to be his downfall. Arrogant people make mistakes. They get careless. They forget that quiet doesn't mean defeated. I started noticing things I'd missed before. Other people's complaints that vanished. Whispered conversations that stopped when I approached. The way certain employees could violate any policy without consequence, while others got written up for breathing wrong. Tyler wasn't the first person Bradley had protected. He wasn't even the 10th. There was a pattern, and once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. Bradley ran HR like his personal kingdom. He decided who was valuable and who was expendable. He rewarded loyalty and punished questions. And the company let him because turnover was low and lawsuits were non-existent. Nobody sued because complaints never made it far enough. He killed them in cradle. This wasn't negligence. It wasn't poor judgment. It was a system. Deliberate. Effective. Wrong. Late one Thursday night, I reread the entire employee handbook. All 78 pages. Most of it was standard, vacation policies, dress codes, procedures for requesting time off. But buried on page 64, in a section about compliance and ethics, I found something interesting. A clause about external reviews. If an employee felt their complaint had been mishandled, they could request an independent investigation by the company's board of directors. It required a written request, specific documentation, and a formal allegation of policy violation. Most people would never find this clause. Most people would give up long before page 64. But I wasn't most people. My hands shook as I drafted the letter. Not from fear. From clarity. From knowing I'd found the door he'd forgotten to lock. I didn't threaten. I didn't accuse him directly. I simply requested records. Copies of my complaint, documentation of how it was investigated, names of people interviewed, conclusions reached. All very polite. All perfectly within my rights according to company policy. Each request went through official channels. Each one required a response. And each response Bradley sent revealed more than he intended. He was used to people backing down. He wasn't used to people who knew the rules better than he did. His replies got testier, more defensive. He made small mistakes, contradicted himself, referenced policies incorrectly, revealed details he shouldn't have disclosed. Every email was another brick in the wall I was building. Slowly, carefully, methodically. The breakthrough came in mid-March. Bradley sent me an email explaining why my complaint hadn't warranted full investigation. He wrote, "After preliminary review, your concerns did not meet the threshold for formal action under Section 4.2 of HR Protocol." I pulled up Section 4.2. It dealt with workplace safety violations, physical hazards. My complaint had been about discrimination and retaliation. Wrong section entirely. Either he'd applied the wrong standard deliberately, or he hadn't actually reviewed my complaint at all. Either way, it was documented proof of mishandling. I read that email 5 times, heart hammering. Then I saved it in 3 different locations. Got you, I thought. Finally. Got you. The notice appeared in my inbox on a Tuesday morning. Subject line: Compliance Review Notification. The board of directors had approved an independent investigation into HR practices and complaint handling procedures. External consultants would be conducting interviews over the next 6 weeks. All employees were encouraged to cooperate fully. Confidentiality would be maintained. I read it twice, then closed my laptop and walked to the bathroom before anyone could see my face. In the stall, I pressed my palms against my eyes and breathed. This was real. This was happening. When I came back, the office was buzzing. People clustered around desks, voices low. Bradley wasn't at his usual post by the coffee machine. His office door was closed. The laughter that usually echoed from his corner had stopped. Within days, Bradley went into damage control mode. Suddenly, he was everywhere, stopping by my desk to chat, asking about my weekend, complimenting my work and meetings. You know, Megan, I've been thinking about our conversation. Maybe I didn't take enough time to really hear your concerns. His voice was gentle, conciliatory, but his eyes were calculating. He was trying to rewrite history before the investigators showed up, trying to make himself look reasonable, responsive, attentive. He talked too much, explained too much, sent follow-up emails that nobody had requested. Every interaction felt scripted, desperate. It would have been satisfying if it wasn't so pathetic. Arrogance makes people careless. Panic makes them stupid. Bradley was becoming both. Then something unexpected happened. People started reaching out to me. Quiet messages, careful conversations in empty hallways. I saw what happened in that meeting. I filed a complaint 2 years ago that disappeared. I thought I was the only one. A woman named Teresa from accounting told me she'd reported harassment and was told she'd misunderstood the situation. A guy named Omar from IT described being written up for questioning a policy violation. Another woman, Christine, had been forced out after complaining about Tyler's behavior toward female colleagues. I wasn't alone. I'd never been alone. Bradley had just made us all think we were. That's how these systems work. Isolation, silence, fear. But once one person speaks, others find their courage. The investigators interviewed me on a Thursday. 2 consultants, professional and thorough, who took notes on everything. They asked about my complaint, Bradley's response, what happened afterward. I walked them through the timeline, showed them my documentation, answered every question calmly, precisely. Then they asked about Bradley's email, the one citing the wrong policy section. In your opinion, was this an oversight or something else? I met their eyes. I don't know his intentions. I only know what the policy says and what he wrote. They don't match. They made a note, asked a few more questions, thanked me for my cooperation. When I left, I saw Bradley in the hallway. He tried to smile. It didn't reach his eyes. For the first time since this started, he avoided looking directly at me. The shift was subtle but unmistakable. In meetings, people listened when I spoke now. Amanda stopped questioning my attitude. Keith, who sat silent in that conference room, nodded at me in the hallway. I wasn't defensive anymore. Wasn't scrambling to prove myself. I was calm, prepared, exact. I'd stopped trying to make them believe me because the truth wasn't mine to defend anymore. It was documented, verified, undeniable. The power had shifted and everyone felt it. Tyler started avoiding me entirely. He'd see me coming and suddenly remember somewhere else he needed to be. Bradley stopped his friendly drop-bys. The office felt different, quieter, like everyone was holding their breath, waiting for the other shoe to drop. The longest week of my life was the one after interviews concluded. Rumors spread like wildfire. People claimed they knew what the report said. They didn't. But the speculation was everywhere, constant, exhausting. I kept working, kept delivering projects on time, kept showing up early and staying late when needed. Let them see who I really was. Not angry, not vindictive, just someone who'd refused to accept being erased. On Friday afternoon, I finished a major presentation that had been delayed twice because of Tyler's failures. I delivered it myself. The client was impressed. Keith told me it was exactly what we needed. I nodded, saved my files, and went home. Whatever was coming would come. I'd done everything I could. The investigation widened in ways nobody expected. The consultants didn't just review my complaint. They audited Bradley's entire tenure. Past cases, closed files, complaints marked resolved that had never been investigated. A pattern emerged. Over 3 years, Bradley had dismissed or mishandled 47 complaints. 47. Some were minor. Many weren't. He protected certain employees regardless of behavior, retaliated against others for speaking up, and selectively enforced policies based on personal preference rather than company standards. It wasn't just bad judgment. It was systematic misconduct. And the company's leadership had missed it because turnover stayed low and nobody sued. They'd mistaken silence for satisfaction. They'd let Bradley build his kingdom because it seemed efficient. They were wrong. Bradley started falling apart in ways that would have been satisfying if they weren't so public. He missed meetings, snapped at people over minor issues, sent rambling emails that didn't make sense. His suits looked rumpled. His office, usually pristine, became cluttered and chaotic. Power looks ugly when it slips away. People who'd admired him suddenly pretended they never had. Conversations stopped when he entered rooms. Nobody wanted to be associated with him now. Tyler, his golden boy, requested a transfer. Amanda suddenly remembered she'd always had concerns about some of HR's practices. The rats were fleeing the sinking ship, and Bradley was drowning alone in the mess he created. The findings were released on a Monday morning. The email was brief, professional, devastating. The investigation had identified significant failures in complaint handling procedures, policy violations, and evidence of retaliatory behavior. Bradley Hoffman would be placed on administrative leave, pending further review. Interim HR leadership would be appointed. All employees who'd filed complaints during the review period would be contacted directly. Policy reforms would be implemented immediately. They didn't call it revenge. They called it misconduct, retaliation, gross negligence. Words that finally mattered. I read the email 3 times. Then I closed my laptop, walked to the window, and let myself breathe. Really breathe. For the first time in months. 2 days later, Bradley was escorted out. No announcement. No dramatic scene. Just security walking him to his office, watching him pack his things, walking him back to the elevator. I wasn't there to see it. I heard about it later from Teresa, who'd happened to walk past. He didn't say anything, she told me. Just kept his head down and left. No final speech. No accusations. No defense. Just gone. The office felt different after that. Lighter somehow. People smiled more. Conversations felt easier. It was like a weight we hadn't realized we were carrying had been lifted. Bradley's office stayed empty for 2 weeks. Then they hired someone new. Someone younger, who actually seemed to care about doing the job right. The apology came from Victoria Chen. I won't use that name either. The apology came from Patricia Morrison, our chief operating officer. She called me to her office personally. I want to thank you for your courage in bringing these issues forward, she said. And I want to apologize that you had to fight so hard to be heard. The company was implementing mandatory training, creating new reporting channels, establishing oversight committees. They were taking it seriously now. Because they had to. Because the investigation had exposed how badly they'd failed. We'd also like to discuss your future here, Patricia continued. Your performance throughout this situation has been exemplary. We have opportunities that might interest you. Opportunities. Plural. I nodded slowly. I'd like to hear about them. The offer surprised me. Senior analyst position. More responsibility. 20% raise. Direct report to Keith, bypassing Amanda entirely. We need people with integrity, Patricia explained. People who care about doing things right even when it's hard. You've proven you're that person. I took the weekend to think about it. Part of me wanted to leave, find somewhere new, start fresh. But another part refused to be driven away. I'd earned my place here. I'd fought for it. Why should I be the one to go? On Monday I accepted. New role. New office. New beginning. But same company. Because I wasn't running anymore. I was done running. Bradley never contacted me. No apology. No explanation. No acknowledgement of what he'd done. I didn't need it. His silence was answer enough. I heard through the office rumor mill that he'd taken a job at a small company across town. Significant pay cut. No leadership role. Just another HR generalist processing paperwork. Some people thought that wasn't enough, that he'd gotten off easy. Maybe they were right. But I wasn't interested in revenge. I'd never been interested in revenge. I just wanted to be heard. To matter. To know that my work and my dignity counted for something. And now I did. That was enough. I learned something important through all of this. Calling something nothing doesn't make it disappear. It just proves who's afraid of the truth. Bradley had tried to erase my complaint because acknowledging it would have meant admitting his system was broken. Admitting he'd failed. Admitting he'd protected the wrong people and punished the right ones. So he'd called it nothing and hoped I'd accept that verdict. But I hadn't. Not because I was brave or special or extraordinary. Just because I knew my worth. And I refused to let anyone, no matter how powerful they seemed, define it for me. That's the real victory. Not Bradley losing his job. Not getting promoted. Just knowing that I stood up, told the truth, and survived. Everything else was just details.